The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on the impact of COVID-19 on QSR and QSR marketing. Thank you all very much for joining us today. We have a lot of ground that we are going to be covering in today's webinar, so we are going to dive in and get started. A few quick housekeeping notes. Please note that this webinar is going to be only 30 minutes. So we have a lot of content to cover in just 30 minutes. If you have any questions, and if we have time, we will answer them at the very end or post the webinar. Please also note that you will indeed get a copy of the recording and the slides afterward. As you can see here, there's a number of major QSR brands that we specifically looked at as part of this webinar effort, and they are listed here for reference. And to highlight the purpose of today's webinar, we really wanted to take the time today to better understand consumer behavior and the role of mobile for QSR brands in these unprecedented times. A little bit of an overview, a detailed overview of what we'll be discussing today. Start off with introducing today's speakers and highlighting where some of the data came from. We'll then be looking at the stated preferences of today's consumers, and then looking at the app install trends, both from third-party apps and apps directly owned and operated by major QSR brands. We'll then discuss why QSR brands should have their own apps, highlight a few brands in particular that are seeing some success, look into specifically who is downloading QSR brand apps now and how that differs from their audience beforehand. And we'll we'll end this with some predictions for what we think will happen in the future. So I'm Matt Kaplan. I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at InMobi, and very happy today to be joined by Julie Berger and Jeremy Huber.
Thanks, Matt. My name is Julie Berger. I am a Senior Sales Manager at InMobi. I cover agency and brand direct relationships across the East and Midwest regions.
Hi, and this is Jeremy Huber. I'm the head of Audience Intelligence North America for InMobi. I oversee the consumer insights, market research, and audience teams. Our teams work with brands and agencies on providing end-to-end solutions, leveraging both our observed data, our market research data, into insights, audiences, and of course through media as well.
And Jeremy, can you speak a little bit about some of the sources of data that we'll be reviewing today?
Yeah, sure. The primary data source that sets us apart for anybody joining that's not familiar, InMobi has over 30 million always on consumers for which we see location over 600 times a day. We know all apps on their device. We also have visibility to their mobile web browsing history. And on those users, we have Experian verified demographics. So as we go through some of the insights later on, just note that a lot of the observed data is coming from that source in addition to any of the demographic information that we share. In addition to that, we have some owned and operated apps that provide us some additional data signals. And then lastly, on that right side, we leverage that same user base that the media team does, nearly 270 million in the US and 1.3 billion users globally, for direct-to-consumer market research to really understand the why behind motivators of consumers.
Fantastic. And so one of the first sources of data that we wanted to look at today are some surveys that we've been running every month since March, when many of us first began to shelter in place. And in particular, we wanted to first look at how consumers are saying they are visiting restaurants and eating out. And Jeremy, what does the data tell us here?
Thanks, Matt. So to Matt's point, each and every month we're looking at observed data. We're also doing market research to help understand what's happening, both not just pre-COVID, but during COVID, and will continue through post-COVID. What we're finding is that as it relates to eating out, although consumers are starting to go out to eat a little bit more in restaurant, we're still showing that about 31% of those consumers in the month of May have still reduced or stopped eating out altogether. That middle icon that you're looking at, it is worthy to note here that number of people that have stopped eating out or physically going to a restaurant is starting to decline, albeit maybe slowly. We started seeing 37% of those respondents stating that they were not eating out or slowing in March, moved down to 34% in April, and again, 31% in May. So a couple of percent shift month over month over month. And we'll continue to monitor this in coming months as well.
Yeah, especially as certain parts of the US begin to open up, as people become antsy and want to get back to their routine. It'll be very curious to see if these numbers shift over time. So we also wanted to look at specifically takeout and delivery behavior. And Jeremy, what does the survey data tell us here?
Yeah, so on the other side of this, Matt, what we're seeing is early into COVID, fewer people were reported as increasing ordering food for takeout. That number has been consistently rising over the past several months, from 7% in March to 10% in April, and most recently a significant increase in May to 17% of respondents stating that they are increasing the amount of food that they're ordering or taking as takeout. On the other side of that, of course, these users were asked a series of questions. So as you can imagine, with more and more saying that they are increasing food for takeout, fewer people are saying that they have stopped or reduced. So they were reducing or stopping their takeout or delivery, and that number has shrunk to 17% in May. So again, large increase on those that are deciding to resume or increase in takeout ordering, and fewer people are saying that they are not doing it or doing it less.
Yeah, and I know, Jeremy, you mentioned to me earlier that there's been some shifting guidelines from the CDC, and I know they've particularly come out and said that the risk of contracting COVID from surfaces is not very high. And so I think that knowing that piece of data, I think is really interesting, that perhaps some fears that people had at the beginning of contracting the virus from a takeout container, from from getting something from a delivery package, that may decrease. And so be very curious to see how these trends, both increasing and decreasing delivery and takeout, will evolve over time.
That's correct. And to your point about regionality, we are tracking both major metro, state, and region as different states start to open up to see how those trends are coming together.
And so we also want to look at some of the app install trends to see which apps people are downloading more frequently now as a result of being at home. And so in particular, we want to look at a variety of what we call third-party delivery apps for food. And Jeremy, what are the major trends and takeaways here?
Yeah, so a couple things we're watching here, Matt. As you can see, DoorDash seems to have a pretty significant spike, along with Grubhub and Uber Eats, as well as Postmates. So as expected, a lot of people have been drawn to the third-party as well as first-party food delivery apps. A couple things that we're going to continue to monitor throughout this pandemic and beyond is we're going to watch to see what happens if Uber Eats does, in fact, acquire Grubhub to create that duopoly, DoorDash and Uber Eats, and to see what kind of impact that has on consumers. And then secondly, the other real interesting point that we're watching is Postmates. As many people probably know, Postmates is a very unique brand in that they want to focus on delivery of not just food. So they actually compete with really all the brands in this view, not just the food delivery, but also the Instacart, Shipt, and Drizzly, as they deliver not just food, but alcohol and grocery-related items. I think everybody had probably seen in the news as well that Instacart was seeing unprecedented growth, and they were up to the point of around first week and a half of April, once others started to kind of take over from that third-party app adoption perspective.
Yeah, and I think this view here to me really hits home the point that we made on the previous slide, that as people are sheltering at home for longer, they are growing more and more willing to order food for takeout or for delivery. And so as a result, Instacart, which is delivering groceries, maybe not as popular as it once was, while DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats are becoming more popular.
Certainly.
And we also want to look at some of the owned and operated apps from major QSR brands. So Jeremy, in looking at some of the major, what we'll call Berger brands, what are the main takeaways here?
Yeah, Matt, there are a couple here of note. If everyone can draw their eye to that first spike in yellow around March 2nd, or on March 2nd rather. Again, this is all observed data, so we know this empirically that these are install trends of first-party QSR apps. And we noticed that McDonald's had a significant spike on March 2nd. After some further research, we found that McDonald's was celebrating National Egg McMuffin Day. During that promotion, they required users to download the McDonald's app to redeem that Egg McMuffin. So you can see where a well-executed concept and promotion considerably drove user app adoption. Similarly, but more longer term, Burger King here as the second note. Burger King going into the COVID pandemic didn't have a very high adoption rate with their consumers, meaning that they didn't have a high percentage of their visitors with app on device. We know that because we track both physical and digital engagements of these consumers. So Burger King probably took a little different approach during this pandemic. They took a good advantage of the low adoption rate and then invested in media to drive app adoption. And as you can see here, the trend that you're seeing is that Burger King, for the first time possibly ever, took the top spot for new app installs for several weeks during that pandemic. And then the last note we have here, you can see a couple of significant spikes for Sonic. Those coincide specifically with offers that they have through their app.
Yeah, and looking at some other brands, Jeremy, from what I can tell, it seems like we're seeing a similar trend here. Is that correct?
It is Subway being the most noteworthy. You can see that they launched on March 4th, buy one, get 1 foot long, only one purchased an app. They saw, again, quite a rise for the entire month of March and have since resumed back to their typical app install levels.
And looking specifically at more pizza-focused brands, what are the main takeaways here, Jeremy?
Yeah, and before we get into some of these, I know Julie's going to speak more in depth on some of the brands in this category. It's important to note that more and more of our research has shown that pizza consumers specifically, much prefer first-party apps versus third-party apps. So it's different in the QSR space because for whatever reason, they prefer to have a Domino's or a Little Caesars or a Pizza Hut app as opposed to ordering through a Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats, or Postmates. But back to this trend line we're seeing, similar to that previous one around McDonald's, in this case, Domino's has been the consistent leader in app installs in this category, up to the point where Little Caesars, I'm assuming they took some sort of a different approach or different strategies towards app adoption, because as you can see, Domino's starts to trail off, as does Pizza Hut and Papa John's saw a bit of a dip, but Little Caesars is now consistently fighting for the number 1, number 2 spot with Domino's during this pandemic.
Yeah, and I think overall the pizza category in particular is a really interesting one to look at because, like a lot of Americans, I'm definitely eating a lot more pizza these days, and I think it's a really ideal dinner option. It's affordable, it's filling, it's family friendly, so definitely an interesting space to take a look at. And so, Julie, we've had a chance to look at some of the trends for a variety of owned and operated apps. But to me, this begs the question, why should a QSR brand have an app in the first place?
Sure. So there are a few different reasons. So one is they're a great way to cultivate customer loyalty. They're the perfect mechanism to drive membership sign-up and enrollment reward systems. They also unlock additional promotional opportunities such as push notifications. So push notifications are a great way to support new offers and deals in a sort of high impact manner. Apps also provide insight into consumers. So advertisers can better understand who has installed, uninstalled their apps, and then who uses their apps most frequently. So these insights can then be used to form audience segmentation strategies. It's also a great way to target and then retarget with tailored messaging. And then finally, app owners are more likely to visit a brand's location. So last year, InMobi's intelligence team, as headed up by Jeremy, completed a research project which explored who visited QSRs from an app ownership and non-ownership perspective. So what we found was that users with a brand's app on device are 15% more likely to visit a brand's location than those without a brand's app on device.
Great. And so, we've had a chance already to look at a few different brands, and one of the ones that we've seen show some success of late has been Burger King. So Julie, what has Burger King been doing compared to some of their competitors that's helped them see success today?
Sure. So Burger King has seen a lot of success in recent months, particularly during the week of March 15th through the 22nd, the BK app installs went up nearly 100%. So we believe this uptick coincides with their marketing strategies. So they've continued to stay in market with various promotions, which we'll run through now. So one promotion was called Stay Home with Whopper. So this was a very lighthearted TV spot. It combines stay-at-home messaging by prompting consumers to place orders through their app. The 3 for $3 challenge was a promotion where BK asked consumers to post a screenshot of a video call with at least 2 of their friends for a chance to win a gift card to cover the cost of something off of the 3 for $3 menu. And then finally, the last example we have here is the QR Whopper campaign. So this refers to a TV spot where consumers use their phone to scan a QR code. They would then be driven to a coupon link for a free Whopper, which they could redeem through an order placed on their app. So in general, what we've seen is that they've struck a great messaging balance of showing humor, empathy, all while driving new customer behaviors in this changing environment. And also, BK is not afraid to run alongside content that mentions terms like COVID-19 and coronavirus. So while other advertisers have blacklisted these keywords, BK was an exception. This has definitely been a smart way to stand out while others have pulled back. And then finally, in addition to its own support of its own app, it also rolled out partnerships with Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Postmates.
Yeah, I think it's, they've definitely been okay with that. They've been smart with marketing, and I think they've seen success as a result. And another brand I know that we've seen some good results from, as we talked about already, is Little Caesars. So Julie, what has Little Caesars done that's helped them see success now?
Sure. So I'll definitely talk about Little Caesars, but first, just wanted to touch on the pizza category in general. So this was definitely the best positioned channel within the QSR space going into the crisis. So pizza brands were already equipped to fulfill carryout and delivery service, so no pivot was required. Operations and core consumer behaviors were already in place. One other important thing to note is that in some instances, ticket prices have even gone up. So people have overbought to make their pizza order last a few days. So that's something to think about as well. For Little Caesars specifically, digital ordering became a core focus prior to the crisis. So they were already well positioned. Pickup was always an option, but delivery became a new focus around the end of Q4. As far as no contact delivery and pickup is concerned, Little Caesars has something called pizza portals where customers enter a code to pick up their orders in stores. The order is released through automated doors. So they're definitely taking this no contact concept to a whole new level. Again, pizza portals were something that were already in many locations prior to the crisis. So going back to that theme of being well positioned prior to everything changing. Something else to call out, Little Caesars has always touted great pricing. So this is obviously ideal for the current economy where people are looking to save wherever they can. All in all, Little Caesars has continued to stay in market with a focus on contactless delivery and pickup, great value, and a focus on digital orders as well.
Great. And Jeremy, we have seen a number of brands like Burger King, Little Caesars, and others see an uptick in installs in their apps of late. And can you speak a little bit specifically to who are downloading these apps, and how does that audience potentially differ from the people that were downloading these first-party apps beforehand?
Yeah, sure, Matt. So again, thinking back to the data slide, this is leveraging not only our app install or app engagers through that passive data. This is where you're seeing some of that Experian verified demographic information come to life. And so what we have been seeing when we compare pre-COVID app engagers against COVID app engagers, we're actually seeing a pretty significant increase in male users, over 3%. has been a shift in that. In addition to ethnicity, in addition to that, we have some ethnicity shifts, albeit slight. And with income, we're already seeing that there's a bit of a tightening of some of those income bands for engagers during this time, with an increase within the $35,000 to $125,000 annual household income range. From an age perspective, we again typically see QSR engagers between that 26 to 45, some venturing into 55 age ranges. We are seeing certainly a little bit more in that 26 and up age range during COVID. So really, kind of in a nutshell, what we're seeing here is more of a doubling down of the core QSR audience. Okay, a little more male, slightly more Caucasian, with medium to high income, and within that 26 to 55 age range. Again, we're going to continue observing this engagement both throughout COVID and post when that does come, to see what kind of habits stick with different audience segments.
That's interesting. The people who are potentially likely to download a QSR app beforehand are maybe especially more likely to download it now.
Yeah, Matt, that's a good point. I think what we attribute a lot of these demographics to are maybe a lot of the kind of working force consumers that are probably now or have been sheltering in place. They're used to going out and getting some of these visiting some of these restaurants for lunch, and instead, of course, they're then downloading the app and doing pickup or in-home delivery.
Great. So we've covered a lot of ground today as far as highlighting what the current situation looks like. And now to look forward a little bit and to think about what may happen in the future. Julie, what do you see as some of the big trends for brands to keep in mind?
Sure. So one thing that we think is going to happen is that the breakfast category will be the slowest to rebound. Consumers have stopped commuting, and obviously they've started to eat breakfast at home. However, as regions open up, we expect brands in this category to slowly ramp efforts to get consumers back in their old habits. In the middle there, we believe delivery and pickup will continue to be popular even after the pandemic passes. Even when lockdowns are lifted, there's a sense that consumers won't be in a hurry to go out again. And also, a great way to engender loyalty with the brand is by having an app. App usage overall has increased, and we think this trend will hold strong going forward.
Yeah, it sounds like in some ways it's just a continuation of some of the trends that we're already seeing and that we just expect to continue for the future.
Exactly.
And Julie, too, as far as some of the trends on the advertising and marketing side, what are you seeing there?
Sure. So we believe that evolving consumer behaviors are here to stay. For example, mobile gaming has spiked, and leading QSR brands have launched integrations and partnerships with games, especially in the in-app environment. QSRs will continue to reach their ideal audiences through apps like mobile games. And then finally, marketers have already and will continue to change the tone of their messages. Many look to strike the right balance of showing empathy, driving a desired consumer behavior, while not appearing to take advantage during a crisis. Common themes include a focus on community, cleanliness, and local habits as areas will reopen unevenly.
Great. And Julie, if we're looking at everything that we've covered today, what would you say are the big takeaways for people tuning in?
Sure. So we believe that every QSR brand should have its own app for a variety of reasons we've touched on today. To recap, app ownership engenders loyalty in a couple of different ways. They're a great way to encourage participation in membership rewards and systems. Also, through our research, we found that people with an app on device are 50% more likely to visit in-store locations. They're also a great way to drive consumers to spend more, as some QSRs see higher ticket sales from orders placed in-app as compared to those orders placed over the phone. Also, we think now is a great time to stay in market. It is a good opportunity to stay in front of people with relevant messaging and drive loyalty through app adoption strategies. We believe these efforts will pay dividends now and in the future.
And Jeremy, from the app side, from some of the trends and data that we highlighted. What do you see as some of the big takeaways for those tuning in?
Yeah, a couple things that we are again continue to monitor and report on, and things that we anticipate seeing in the near future is a continued increase in consumers that are more and more comfortable with the options to order, takeout, and delivery through both first and third party apps. Matt, to your point around the CDC updates and the how difficult it may be to actually transmit COVID through those types of bags or what have you, or through food. We anticipate that as more people grow comfortable and learn more about the coronavirus, that they'll not only continue to order food for takeout and delivery, but those numbers will continue to increase. We're also watching, in restaurant or dine-in behaviors, both from a footfall and market research perspective. So trying to anticipate how different brands and different restaurants are social distancing and following guidelines, and really how comfortable consumers are going to be with that new maybe temporary normal. But that said, most all of these we anticipate all these behaviors and really are becoming habits with consumers. We anticipate them staying for quite some time. And I think that's probably also why you see, to Julie's point, the QSR brands that are starting to heavily reinvest in the breakfast day part, Starbucks and other coffee brands are looking to come out aggressively to remarket. And that's, again, because consumers, not only have they changed their breakfast habits, they're also changing how they consume coffee. Many of consumers are doing more coffee at home, and so we're looking at anticipating seeing Starbucks, Dunkin', Panera, kind of those leaders and others increase spend significantly to try to gain back the share of consumers and reestablish those pre-COVID habits.
Great. Well, that's the main material. We do have some time for questions. So anyone tuning in, if you do have any questions, please let us know. So Julie, one question to start off is around measuring success. So for a QSR brand, if they are looking to run an in-app advertising and marketing campaign, what kind of KPIs should they be using?
Sure. So they can definitely work off a variety of KPIs in the in-app environment. Currently and historically, QSRs have worked with us in a number of different ways in support of awareness, footfall, and also performance goals like app installs and cost per order KPIs. So all strategies work very well in the in-app environment. Of course, due to the trends we covered in today's presentation, most recently we've seen an uptick in the performance goals as referenced.
Fantastic. Well, everyone, thank you all for tuning in today. If you do have any questions after the fact, please know that you can email me directly. My email address is here. Everyone, thank you all for tuning in. Until next time.